I've screwed a batten to the floor here, which is to take the bulkhead. This is the front of the rear bunk, or the rear seat. And I've just cut a hole in there for this ducting for the hot air to come through, and this is our vent here, so that goes through from the outside and it just fits in there, and you can see that that just goes straight over there. This ducting does expand a little bit, so we'll be good with that. And I'll probably, given that it's come out and it's a couple of inches above the floor, once it's connected onto here, I don't want it to vibrate as the van's running, so I'll probably put a block underneath here and a bracket or a cable tie just to hold it steady. But at the moment I'm going to Sikaflex this into the hole. You can see that's the whole piece of plywood, and when this fits in, that'll look quite nice. So I'm just going to bond this in. There are screw holes that can be fixed, but bonding is a lot more secure than a couple of wee screws, because the plywood's half an inch thick, so, and it might receive the odd kick, you never know, in use. So the thing about Sikaflex is that once it's set, it's really not going anywhere. This cowl rotates, so I can actually put it in any direction. And that just basically presses into there. And that's fixed. It's a good installation. So when it's blowing hot air, it'll be angled slightly downwards, and that will be good. In fact, what's holding that diesel tank on is just Sikaflex. The RNLI use Sikaflex for applying brackets and what have you to the outside of wheel houses for life rafts and what have you. They don't use metal fixings because that tends to stress the fiberglass. So if it's good enough for the RNLI, then it's good enough for this application. And I can put that, once that's cured, I can connect those two up. I'll be taking this off and on a few times because I've got this to plumb in. I've ordered the new fitting to go through the outside to the outside of the van, so I'm going to try and not snooker myself here. And as you can see, I've now screwed the diesel heater down and fixed the diesel pump down and screwed the tank on, which is a good solid fixing. There's a bit of flex because it's a plastic tank, but that's very solidly on there. And this is quite nicely rubber mounted, so I'm not imagining you're going to get a lot of noise through there. The van is actually parked up against a wall, with the back doors up against the wall, so I can't open them at the moment. So I'm saving connecting the tank up and the painting and all of the other jobs. I'll move the van forward a bit. And I think probably here is where the batteries are going to go. And the next job, and pretty much the last job for the diesel heater, is to make a transition piece to go through here. There'll be a hole cut through there, and I don't want to put this straight through the plywood because it's kind of difficult to get a seal. So what I'm going to do is, because it's cold air coming through here, I can use wood. and I'm going to turn a cowl basically to go over here with a wee step to be bonded into the plywood, which is the next thing to do. And I've got a bit of hardwood in the workshop, so I'll do that, and then I could conceivably just fit this bulkhead, screw it and glue it. But as I say, I'm going to be waiting for the fitting, and I'll fit that, which is not promising to be an easy job, but I'll get it. This is a square piece of wood, and I'm just knocking the corners off to make it round. So this line here, which you may just be able to see, is the internal diameter. The external diameter of the intake. Okay. The inside has to be hollowed out all the way. But I'm going to leave this hole in the middle, because I'm going to flip it over, cut halfway through, flip it over, and the chuck will go in here, and then I'll bore in from the other side. This will be the last job I do. So now that's turned round in the chuck, and then this line here is where the intake goes. You can make it a bit bigger than the intake itself. It gives me a bit of space for the Sikaflex. So that's just a little bit small. Take that out a bit more, and at some point, I'm going to meet the cut on the other side, and that is going to come loose from the chuck and probably spin off to the other side of the workshop. You can hear it, it's ready to go now. There you go. So there's a little bit of wood just to take out, but effectively, so that side, that's the hole, the size of hole I cut in the plywood, and that fits onto the plywood, and then the cowl fits inside there and is Sikaflexed, and then that's a nice neat airtight seal. And this has actually been a bit of a nuisance, because just to get the camera, as well as doing this job, I'm also building a box to go on the back of a classic Bedford TK, which is really in the way at the moment. And this is being built, and when it's completed, it's just screwed together temporarily at the corners, and I'll take it apart and coat the outside in epoxy, and then the whole thing will be assembled on the Bedford, which is a 1978 Bedford TK, fully restored. But as you can see, it's really taking up a lot of my workshop at the moment. The little bit at the front is the luton part. That's where that goes over the top of the cab, and then the doorway goes in here. But that's my weekend job. So I've cut a hole in the ply, and that's that installed. You can see it goes all the way through the ply, and when the bulkhead is installed, that fits in there quite nicely. And from the other side, I'll run a bit of Sikaflex around there just to seal it completely, but that's effectively that. And then I'll build a bit of plywood ducting across the front there, going to the shower, and that's where it'll be taking the cold air out, which will keep the shower nice and sweet. So that's effectively the installation of the diesel heater done. So it's just to make the electrical connection and to connect the diesel tank up to the fuel line when I can open the back doors. I'm just going to leave everything in there loose for the moment, and I think the next job will be to stick the leisure batteries in. And looking at the space we have here, I would imagine next to the air conditioner would probably be the best place. There's not, by the time I've done that, it's not going to be an awful lot of room in the back to put stuff. I'm thinking about some protection for the ducting, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean, there's a very large roof rack going on the top, so a lot of stuff is going to be stored up there. And in fact, you can see from the bulkhead here that there's really not going to be very much space, because the bunk goes back to here and then it goes up. I've just unpacked the batteries, and it seems that these are deep cycle lead acid batteries, which is a bit of a nuisance because unlike the gel leisure batteries, they produce hydrogen when they're charging, and that is an explosive risk. And also they could conceivably leak acid as well if they're overcharged, which means A, that this whole space needs to be vented to the outside air and sealed from the rest of the van, which was what I was going to do anyway, but I wasn't going to have to put a vent in until just now. So I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a vent in that back door leading to the outside air, so this whole space is vented. And it also means that it's conceivable that they may leak acid if they're overcharged or being used heavily. They're sealed, but it's still a possibility, so they're going to have to go in a battery box, which I shall have to make. And it'll have to be proof against acid as well, hydrochloric acid. So I'll make a box out of plywood, and that will be coated in epoxy on the inside, which is more or less resistant to hydrochloric acid, which I didn't know I was going to have to do, but I am. And you can see that the space in the rear of the van is now quite full. So the light's going now, it's getting late, and I think I'll be doing that tomorrow. I think I've got some heavy duty ply. It's just basically a simple box, and it'll be vented and it'll have a lid on it, so if anything was put in the back of the van it wouldn't accidentally short out the terminals. On the plus side, they are quite heavy duty batteries, and with them both together in parallel, not in series, because that would give you 24 volts, you'll get a lot of juice if you're parked up. And with the LED lights that will be in the van, they'll probably last a very long time. Anyway, that's what I'll be doing tomorrow morning.